Hello and welcome back. This week we're talking to Darren Bacon, concept art veteran and art director with over a decade of experience in game development, leadership, managing art teams. He has worked on stuff like games you might know, like Halo Infinite, Halo 5, Destiny. He's contributed to the franchises of like Star Wars, Tron, Command and Conquer, and many more. So these days, he's leading teams and creating digital experiences, blending the artistic with the technical. So I think he's about the perfect guy to talk to when it comes to world building in games. But in any case, we want to let him speak up first and maybe fill us in on what he has been up to in the last couple of years.
All right. Yeah. Hey, thanks. Yeah. So the last couple of years, 2, 3 years, I was at a startup which was making a first-person shooter, extraction shooter video game. It was we were primarily building for PC, but also we're building on the Xbox. So we had Xbox dev kits, and just trying to like build the game and test it there as well. But yeah, we shipped 7 playable builds over the course of 2, 3 years with a dedicated community. And the whole the whole twist with this project was that we sort of like had pillars stood up of a game we wanted to make, and then we were building it and releasing it in iterations, and would solicit feedback, and then try to just like kind of build it brick by brick alongside gamers and players. So yeah, that's what I was up to, and that's it's been a heck of a ride. Since then, it is spectacularly disassembled, so that is no longer a thing anymore, as far as I know. But yeah, that's what's going on over here.
And what are you up to now that that's finished? Are you doing anything new, or because I recently I saw that you've been doing a lot of like post-it drawings and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, man. I wonder, are you are you just taking a break? Are you gonna do some more? Are you doing working now, or what's going on?
Yeah, I was trying to, yeah, I hadn't got a chance to touch on that yet. I'm starting a new job soon, which I can get into in a bit, but it's again in the game space. Ever since Midnight Society shuttered, I sort of pivoted and focused a ton of my energy into Roblox, which obviously is like video game that ships cross-platform on pretty much everything for like iPhones and iPads and all that. I really wanted to spend a bunch of time to do an experience in there, and I was working on that for several months, and then the summer hit, and then Emmanuel, because like I've got some young kids, and so one thing that sort of happened to me is like, especially on the Roblox side, or doing anything that's sort of like heavy thinking, like I couldn't find a way to like get in the zone, right? Like I need like 4 hour chunks of time to be productive, and so during the summer that was just not possible. So that was sort of like, well, I was like, oh, I'm gonna pick up a little project that I can sort of do, something I could sit down and do in 30 minutes or so, and then maybe I can edit it on the go. And also like the flip side of that is like wanting to do something that was small and obtainable, but also wanting to try to break into TikTok a little bit, just because I mean, just in general, right? Like TikTok is disruptive in social media. It's also in games, right? Like, I was going through this one slide deck that I think it was like an investor slide deck of just sort of like the state of the game industry. It was this massive deck that a friend of mine sent me. And like the main themes were, because the game industry is obviously struggling. Um, if I remember correctly, the big main themes were, the last decade, you had a lot of growth in the game space coming from mobile games. And mobile games are sort of being eroded by, users doing different things like TikTok, short form video. So I even see that in my own life, where like with like my wife, where it's like, she used to be really into playing Plants vs. Zombies or Candy Crush or something like that, right? But like she's never like gonna sit down and play those games anymore, because she's just gonna be drawn into some short form video. Um,
Mm,
so
mm.
I so that's tricky with the game space. Obviously, finances are just weird in general, and getting back in the game area. And then you also had the post-COVID boom where there was just massive investment and scaling of every project, just because everyone was sort of glued to their screens in 2020. So there was just multiple factors why things are going well. That's sort of like all swirling around in my head. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to be doing some stuff. Like I should be posting work to social media again. I should try to grow TikTok or try to understand TikTok. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand just like what works. And so I'm just posting a video on TikTok that's, a low effort piece, post it on TikTok, post it on Instagram, post it on Reels, and then see what does well and why. And then over multiple days, and then kind of try to find trends and what might work, or you know what I mean? Like what an audience is looking for, or can you find your own audience? I also have my sister has an art content page, right? So she does like what is it she call it? She calls it cameraless photography. So she was an art student, and she went into doing photography stuff, and then this cameraless photography stuff, and she's grown a pretty big following on social media. So like her and I will have a lot of conversations like this, like like what works on TikTok, what works on Instagram, which algorithm is, like how do they work, and just trying to like figure it out, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, that's sort of what I've been up to, and trying to like figure out sort of what's going on out there,
Yeah, I think that's a familiar story with a lot of people these days, right? I mean, us included, I think there's a lot of things shuttered, a lot of things like it's difficult to pick up. Like I think the gaps between jobs become longer and longer, and you're just trying to navigate the space and figuring out like what the hell is going on in this world. And
Yeah.
yeah, I can feel you with the summer holidays and the kids. That's been a major disruption for sure. But let's see how it goes forward. Emmanuel, should we start on the world building a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious in just to finish the
Sure.
social media stuff. It's like why TikTok? I mean, like what's the interest there?
TikTok it has better monetization tools, I think, right? Um, I think, and we even see this with like, I think, TikTok's even like a threat to Amazon in a way, just because if you look at the way like consumers in China are using it, where it's basically like QVC, or like,
Mm,
you'll have
mm,
these like massive, it's just like, it's almost like, what's that, sort of dystopian Jim Carrey movie where like his wife is selling him Ovaltine. You know what I mean? Where it's like you
The
follow,
Truman Show or
yeah,
something?
Truman Show, right? Like everything's Truman Show, and so you follow all these celebrities, and they're just going to be selling you stuff the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think
Oh,
that's where
interesting.
I think that's where the platform's headed. TikTok in particular, right? Because it's like they're putting so much emphasis into TikTok Shop.
So
Um,
basically, it's just to see if it can bring a viable sort of financial.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, okay, no, that's great. I mean, I think in this climate, I mean, you kind of have to look outside of the box.
yeah. I think it's just like throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Um,
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. Um, yeah, I mean, for those people who don't know, I mean, I met Darren at Image Movers,
yeah.
and we were just talking about sort of our age, which we won't disclose, but but we met there, and I still remember, I mean, we did a lot of. I think back then you did a bit of, uh, you did a lot of vehicles, and then I think you moved on to environments.
Yeah,
And I think I mean, this is over 20 years ago,
dude, it was a long
literally
time ago. Yeah.
around 20 years ago. So since then, I've seen you do a lot of stuff that is sort of actually more environments.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's why I was like, wow, you'd be a great person to ask about this all this world building stuff. So, we're gonna kick it off. Jan, where are we starting?
I mean, usually our previous guests, we asked like the very big question first, right? The massive question, like what do you understand under world building? Like what is world building for you, right? And since I think you also worked in the capacity of art director, maybe would be great to get your perspective on how you approach world building in the first place.
Okay. Yeah, before I jump into that, I want to share a story of a manual for you, Jan, is that when Doug brought me in there, right? Like I was like a noob, total noob on all that stuff. And so like basically my job was, because Emmanuel was being super kind. I did do some vehicles and stuff, and I did do a lot of stuff down the line. But when I started there, my job was basically to set up Photoshop documents for Emmanuel and Brian Flora, right? So like and then it would
No, that wasn't.
oh yeah, a little bit. It'd be like Emmanuel would be like, okay, go put some brick textures in this wall and come back to me so
No,
I
I
can
didn't.
like
Get out of here.
No, but there was a bit of that. I felt super bad though because like Doug would just like plot me behind like Brian Flora or Kurt or you and be like, all right, just watch these guys for a little bit. You know what I mean? It was like it was very much like boot camp in that sense, which was amazing, right? Like I can't imagine like it's just it was a surreal experience. So any thanks for all that. But to dive into the world building question, world building for me, and how I approach it, it depends. Like there's been the last three projects I worked on, the last one was Dead Drop, which was the Midnight Society one. Previous to that was Halo. And then Halo 5 to an extent was a little different, but Destiny was another one that was pretty different. And so what I would say for like on Halo Infinite, the approach was we were trying to reimagine Halo uh the the way you remember it, right? So it's very much a similar vibe to like the art direction and production design of like Rogue One, where like you don't the original footage of Empire was like solo res, and when you saw a Star Destroyer, it's like if you were to blow that up to 4K, you would have to do a lot of artistic work to like upres that. And you want to do that in a faithful way and not not just like make up a cool new spaceship because you're creative. So that was kind of Infinite in a nutshell. Halo 5 was a bit different than that. So you should not get too deep into like the history of Halo. It was a when 343 took it over from Bungie on Halo 4, you had um, the art director, Kenneth Scott, who was a phenomenal artist, right? Amazing guy, but he brought over his team from id. So you kind of had the idification of Halo to an extent. And it was sort of like their take on Halo, which was great in its own right, right? But it's like it was almost sort of like how maybe like Batman was in the 90s, where, you know, a dude director would come in and be like, this is my Batman, and then it would be like, this is my Batman, this is my Batman. So um the approach that the franchise was trying to take after that was sort of like more like the Marioification of Halo, right? Where it's like, hey, every iteration we release um a game, it's going to be uh like Mario, right? Like Mario always looks like Mario. So that was sort of the approach on Halo. So even on Halo Infinite, even on the world building front, it was always like, all right, let's go look at what was done in the past, and then how can we build out there? Where it's like or like an analogy would be like, give me a box with the top off. I want to have some constraints, but we want to have some creativity. But you know, not be totally constrained, but also not be like totally like there's no walls. There's no walls and no floor. And then on Destiny was, for all of us, all the concept artists involved and all the artists in general, it was just sort of the Wild West in a ways, right? And that was also another thing where it was like throwing a lot of ideas on the wall and seeing what sticks. And then trying to like build out build out some structure and some guidelines and then expand from there. If that makes sense. Does that answer the world building question?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I
Is
mean,
that
I don't think there's ever like a definitive answer, but I mean, I think I'm most curious, two things. I mean, because you just said two very, very big things. One is obviously Halo has history, and how do you deal with sort of a set of rules already that have been, that have been created, through the years, because that's, to me, that's already built, right? The world building is already there. You have to follow it versus Destiny, which was complete open. Like,
Yeah.
because I think it would be such a blessing to have a project, like Halo, with all these rules, and then all of a sudden you go to Destiny, has no rules.
Yeah.
In which case, how do you make a lore? Do you make a lore? How do you world build your designs? Because they have to come from somewhere for them to be believable and then for them to buy off on it, right? So how do you actually tackle that? Do you, start coming out with a story for yourself? What happens when you have to just come up with a world?
Yeah, I mean, it's always in the game sense, it maybe is different than film in regards to like video game development is always a marriage of art, technology, and design. It's like that's really it. And so what I mean by that is like from a world building perspective, design is going to give you a space, more or less. They might want help from inspiration from either the writers or narrative, right? Or art. But yeah, it's like it all has to work together. So design is going to say like, hey, I want to do this big gate entrance or something, for example, right? And so come to art and be like, give us some ideas. Concept art gets involved and tries to help generate some ideas. And then on the technology side, then engineering team or tech art team is going to come through and be like, hey, like actually, you know, that this view distance pulls in too many draw calls, so I can't see. You know what I mean? Like we need to block off part of the scene or something like that so that I don't drop frames when I look at this vista. And so that's where it becomes very much like, you know, that's kind of where that marriage sort of comes from. Whereas like, obviously in like film or anything pre-rendered, you can just do whatever you want. There's really no constraints. So in a lot of ways, it's more artistic. Um, but yeah, on the game side, it's like trying to find the best sort of compromise that works to keep, all sort of parties happy. And because, gameplay
Mm,
is going to win every time. So that's how
sure.
it sort of works on the game side.
Yeah, I mean, it's like story always wins in film, right? I mean, like you need to have good story, and you can have
It
all the
should.
bells and whistles. It won't. Well, at least that's what I think it.
Yeah, right? I don't
I
know.
don't know, but yeah, I mean that makes sense. Because gameplay is important, and I still remember back when I did some games, and it was a marriage of the two, but usually, always gameplay, game design always trumps everything. Um, but I wonder, when you have to make a world in that space, like how do you actually build out something really robust? Or is it just like, okay, well, let's really work with the game designers, and it kind of forms itself in a way, like, okay, we want to do these things. There's a lot of discussion. It's not like, like Dune, where you're like, all right, well, we've got this world and we've got this world, and these are the things that happen in this world. Now go design something that makes sense there.
Yeah,
When it comes to games, it seems like that's not really how it is, or
it's
is
not
it?
always the case. I mean, it sort of depends. Like most of the time, too, like especially like on a campaign-driven game, it's usually the story's not super solved. So like the example I always
Mm,
give is like when we worked at Image Movers Digital, which is like really my only experience on the film side. I worked on a
mm,
TV show, but it was also different because that was like animated. But at Image Movers, right? Like I do know that like obviously like Marzine's moms had like 30 scripts or something, right? But generally speaking, if you have a script with a shot list and you have like basically there's like every asset. It's like, okay, I need like this room, that room, all these props, these vehicles or whatever, right? So it's very like simple in a way, or it's like there's a really tight, it's really tight production. Like you can do a film in the sense like in a tight production, it's like I know how many sets I need, I know how many costumes I need, X, Y, and Z, unless the script is changing, right? But if everyone's got their ducks in a row, it should be pretty straightforward. Whereas like on the game side, like nothing is final until you're pressing submit. You know what I mean? Like people change things till the very last minute. A lot of times, like one of the strategies we use like at Midnight Society, this is not like a big deal, like everyone does this, but like you'll you'll put in a placeholder asset that maybe fits the right silhouette, but you're knowing you're going to come back and change it. So you'll be pencils down and you'll stub in a placeholder asset, knowing that you're going to come back to it and fix it when everyone else is bug fixing. So everything is very like, you know, just sort of like hand wavy for a long time. And so concept art helps, right? So if you have like a really great vision piece or whatever you want to call it, a piece of concept art that sort of captures everything into one piece, then that's great because you can use it as your blueprint going forward. But a lot of times, like games don't come together until the very last minute from the arts, because also just because like all the technology stuff, right? Like tech art is going to come through and or engineering will come through and turn off stuff, right? And you're like, hey, well, like, like what happened to my drips, or whatever, right? And they're like, oh, that dropped frames, so it's gone. Or,
Mm,
this animation's gone or whatever, right? So you don't really have an idea of what it's going to look like until the very end. Well, if you have a really
mm.
robust pipeline, that could be true. Like you could have a pretty good understanding of it, but it's very fluid. So it's like it's very go with the flow. And then on the world building side, all you can do really is like just be as prepared as possible. So it's like style guides, like again, as much concept art as you can basically afford. Like it's the more prepared you can be, the better.
So say, because I'm just thinking, for a lot of people who are studying environments and world building and things, I mean, because world building is a very, very wide term, right? I mean, you could, I mean, there's so much you could say that is world building. Uh, but what do you normally, like, let's say you're pitching for Destiny, and you're saying, okay, you know, I'm gonna make some key art, to sell my idea of the world, which is your world building inside your head. I mean, you've got some kind of world. Um, how do you go about doing that? I mean, do you just go, okay, well, I'm just going to draw something, or are you going to be like, okay, well, let me get inspired, let me do this, let me make some rules for the world, let me make a bunch of paintings. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's like generally speaking, the concept art side of things, it's like it is the picture is worth 1,000 words type thing.
Hmm.
So, and I think a lot of game development too is just about like building consensus, especially on the art side, the concept art side, especially for world building, right? Like where it's like your job is to basically inspire everybody because all the environment artists and the animators and the texture artists, like all that stuff, like everyone, like if you give them some kind of like mid piece of concept art, they're going to probably not be very inspired and kind of put in like a mid-level effort, right? Versus like if you do
Hmm.
something that's like some really like epic environment concept piece, just like mind-blowing, and you hand it off to the team, everyone's going to be like, oh, that's sick, like I want to work on this tonight, you know what I mean? Like I want to get started on this right away. So I think like that can be really powerful in the game development side of things, just because there's no way to build a game. It's very hard to build a game with a small team or by yourself. You need people. It takes a lot of resources to do it, and you have to like inspire those people. And so that's really where like the concept artist's job is almost more than else, right? It's just like just to sort of set the direction and get everyone to. It's like herding cats. It's like, hey, we're all going to go this way. It's part of the art director's job, and the concept art is obviously really crucial in that. So yeah, as far as like world building goes, like I would say like that's sort of it's like the primary use of doing like some vision piece or doing something that's like to set the tone or the mood or to sort of sell some like big picture idea that the whole team can go after.
Is this usually try to do it in one, or are you just doing like a whole bunch?
Uh, if it depends, right? Like I think the type of piece that I just described to you could, that could be like you're doing multiple pieces leading up to it, like
Mm,
multiple sketches, and then be like, okay, now I'm going to do like the vision piece or the postcard piece or whatever you want to call it, right? Like the thumbnail of this level or the, whatever you're trying to sell. So it could be multiple, but yeah, oftentimes like trying to distill everything down into one, it can be hard, but that would be the goal, I'd say, just because, you want to like, you want to have that North Star. But
So
yeah,
having one really cool image and then kind of people going, wow, that's cool. And then maybe you can develop further.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
totally.
I would assume that, you're, because in a lot of the games, yeah, and even film, like you have a bunch of images and you're all kind of vying for that vision, right? I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
like especially when, Star Wars, like, Rogue, I guess not Rogue One, when they rebooted Star Wars at Lucasfilm, I mean, there were so many different looks and
Oh my
different,
gosh. Yeah.
so it feels like, every concept artist is trying to, shove their vision, there.
Yeah.
And so I guess having that one hook image is actually really important.
Yeah, you don't see as much of that on the game side, but yeah, totally. Like on it, like when we were at IMD, also like on Star Wars, right? Like those, or like I was submitting some stuff for Rogue One, and I remember seeing that stuff, right? Like I would see uh just like all these proposals for the drop ship or whatever, right? And like, yeah, there's just like there must have been hundreds of versions of that. I don't know how many, right? Like so many versions or so many like droids. You know what I mean? So yeah, like it definitely feels like I don't know if that's probably just the way film is. I don't know. Maybe that's the way Doug likes to work. I don't know. Where he's like, I'm gonna put 10 artists on one task and then see which one works. You know what I mean?
I think, I mean, I think we're talking about that as a sidebar.
Yeah.
Truthfully, is that's how Doug likes to work.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's not because, it costs a lot of money to do it like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the truth of it is, I mean, it's since IMD, I've been on a lot of films, and I don't think I've ever had one film where it was like that ever.
Interesting. Yeah.
Very, very rarely, because it would be, hey, look, we'll hire you. We think you've got some skills, and we're going to put you on this, and
Yeah.
you do that, And Doug was more like, all right, well, we've got this sci-fi downtown area. Why don't five of
Yeah.
you give me a version? Because ultimately, it was IMD's sort of tab, right? I mean, we had a 30+ person art department.
Yeah.
Look, there was constantly we were doing
Oh yeah.
each other's environment. I don't even, you remember? I mean, we were
Yeah.
all like, I think for Marsden's moms, we were all, everyone was tasked to come up with a look for the city.
Yeah.
What does it look like? And everybody was doing the same thing, but in their own way. And that's a luxury that I don't think I've seen ever since IMD. But not now. Normally, for me, a world, like you better, yeah, I guess in film is a lot of like one image. Hey, I really like where that's going, and let's go in that direction. That's happened, but one of the bigger question is, something good looking versus something that has real substance and really thought out, right? Because you can have an image that looks beautiful, but it doesn't necessarily have a lot of substance, right? It doesn't have a lot of design thinking in it. It's just like, well, that's really cool. It's a big
Yeah.
thing, and it's got scale and it's all this stuff. Versus, taking the time to actually design the architecture or taking this, and I guess the question is, what's important to you when you art direct? Is it like, hey, you really thought about the design, that's great, but I need to sell that design with a really cool image? Or is it just, hey, I want to see some cool stuff?
Yeah. I mean, well, I think it's interesting to hear like sort of like your take on the film side. Similarly, like on every game I've worked on since then. there's never been the luxury, like it's almost like a time luxury or a HR luxury to have enough artists to point on multiple at one task. I think it's happened a few times, right? Like I remember like on Halo we had it where we were just having a hard time getting traction with like certain alien creatures like early on post Halo 5. And so that was a deal where like everybody on the art team took a crack at something. And
Mm.
so we did do it. But it was more like that would be like a scenario where, you know, there wasn't like a strong vision from like a creative direction standpoint or like a game design standpoint. So it'd be like, oh, it's going to be this creature and it's going to act like X, Y, and Z, and then that shifts. You know what I mean? So the design shifts, and as a result, the art shifts, and so we would just, we did cycle artists through it. So we did that a bunch, but yeah, I mean, in that use case, but like generally speaking, yeah, there's just not an ability to have that many artists tackle one thing. Um, when I think like, in the past as like a concept lead or as art director, it's like going to the artist, kind of like you described, right? Like it's like, oh, I need, this type of outcome. I'm going to go to this artist, and then hopefully they can help achieve that look. You know what I mean? Not, like not going to an artist that only does characters and be like, hey, I really need help with this environment. So
Mm.
yeah, I think it's sort of like just kind of knowing who to call, right? In a lot of ways
Yeah.
in that
Do
in
you
that way.
find it easier to like let's say you're on Halo and you say, hey, look, Halo has these rules. So you got to follow them
Mhm.
because it's like Star Wars, right? Star Wars,
Yeah.
it doesn't look Star Wars enough. Is that easier to sort of maintain a look when you kind of already have this whole world built, or is it more fun to sort of be like Destiny, where you're like, well, I don't really quite know what this is yet, and to explore that and to find that because you can't tell your artist like, hey, these are the rules because there are no rules at that point,
Yeah, I think I think the blue sky stuff can be more fun for sure. But it's a different challenge. Like in a lot of ways, I think like if you're designing for Star Wars or you're designing for like a strict Halo reboot or something, or like you're trying to make Star Trek or whatever, right? Like I think in a way that could be you can find ways to make that fun in like a challenging way where it's like I got to make this fit in the aesthetic. But it's just a very different challenge. Um,
right?
than being like super creative. I mean, because there's times like on Halo 2 where there is creativity. Like I know like like Jan did like stuff on Halo Wars 2,
Mm.
which was super super cool and like out there and creative. And we even used that, like I was pulling that stuff in and we were looking at that on Halo Infinite, especially like how you know we could fracture environments, right? So I know that John had done some stuff with Jeremy Cook to
Mm.
sort of like
Yeah.
show like these like tectonic,
Mm.
shifting plates. And so then we were looking at that, and I was working with a concept artist, Espen Sattervik, and sending Espen all this stuff and being like, let's try to like make it look like there's like a whole like like Land Before Time moment, right? Where like a tectonic plate shifts and you see that sort of structure change. And so we were like experimenting with like stuff like that. But that's kind of where it can get really fun. But that's sort of what I mean about like, the box with the top off of it. It's like it's nice to have some constraints, but it's also nice to have some moments where you can be creative too.
Jan, did you have some questions? I mean, I don't
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to monopolize the questions.
no, 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 no,
Jan's
not
just
at
sitting
all,
there
not at
like,
all. Just waiting for a moment to interject here.
Yeah.
yeah, go,
I have
you
I have a
go.
few actually, but I'm wondering if the most interesting one would be about we talked a lot about like how I think the gameplay and the challenge of making games kind of not interferes with world building, but kind of shapes world building in a sense. Um, but I was wondering for you personally, like what do you think makes a world like stick with an audience, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be about like the projects you worked on. It can also be something that you just like to reference, that you like to go back to. I remember we had Feng Zhu on for a couple of weeks ago to talk about his take on world building, and he gave the example of Avatar and how it plays in a different world in a different time, but it keeps things very relatable to the human experience, so that the audience has like a point of reference when it comes to like the military, the weapons, the vehicle design, that kind of stuff. And I was wondering, like, if you have any sort of like design pillars, design things that you always look out for, that you make sure that like this relates to the audience, or I don't know, what makes, again, what makes a world stick for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of build off that, like I agree, like relatability really matters. So like in a first person shooter, I would say like thing like I've had these discussions around like weapon design, right? Like which is very similar to kind of like the James Cameron approach, where it's like you want to have things that look familiar. You don't want to like you don't want to be probably shooting, something that looks so abstract that it doesn't remind you of anything in the real world, right? Like so that's always like the problem if you're doing anything alien, like if we were all to just be like, I'm gonna go make an alien movie, it's like, okay, well, aliens would probably be pretty weird. And if we were to actually like depict, you know what I mean, like what an alien were to look like or to operate, it probably would not be like conventionally how we think. So yeah, you have to like, do it our way, right? So like District 9 or whatever, right? Where it's like they're just like tacking on sci-fi bits to real world objects, or whatever. Like a whole bunch of movies do that, right? That's just a whole sort of genre. But yeah, I think like relatability is good. I think in games and film, like there's really no limit except for your imagination. So I think how can you surprise audiences and players and give them something that they've never seen before, or something that's like so iconic, or so maybe it's scale, right? But finding some way to like surprise and sort of surprise players and give them this like really memorable thing that they haven't encountered before. And so I think that's sort of like I would be at the top of my mind for a lot of things. So like the last project I worked on, Dead Drop, the whole setting was supposed to be in like a Judge Dredd-esque mega structure tower, and so that was and that tower was almost like a character in the game, or sort of like how we tried to explain it to people. And so yeah, for us it was like, how do we make that, and how do we build that as the world and make that like the most iconic, massive mega structure thing. At any point you're playing the game, you're like, oh wow, I'm in this crazy giant structure. Or like when you're driving up to the tower, you could always see it in the skybox and it was looming overhead, and so yeah, I think coming towards the problem of like, how do you make it iconic for players and memorable and just something that people haven't seen before as much as you can, right? And I think like certain games like Destiny are really good at doing that. And that's sort of like what brings players back. It's like it's that escapism. They want to like boot into the software and be transported to your world. So yeah, that's sort of my take
Sure.
on that.
Cool. Yeah. Um, the other question I wanted to ask, and I guess I want to extend it a little bit. Emmanuel already touched on the subject of like, where do we draw the line between just something pretty and epic, and something that was like had some thought put into it. And I want to kind of widen the net a little bit and talk about how you've seen kind of maybe the entertainment landscape evolve in the last 20 years. And like the beginning of the talk, we talked a little bit about like how limitations are actually good when it comes to world building. Um,
Yeah.
and for me, that kind of all comes together now that we are going into like a future, it feels like without constraints, right? Like, okay, like, yeah, in if you show a vista and you have to block half of it off because it has too many draw calls or whatever, right? But now with the ever expanding like power of graphic cards and DLSS and all this kind of stuff, AI assisted like frame generation, like all these limitations at some point will be a thing of the past. And to kind of all bring all these different thoughts together, like um how do I phrase that? I hope you kind of understand what I'm kind of going towards, right? Like the kind of games that seem to be doing well these days seem to still operate under like certain limitations, and the limitation often being the budget. Um, but do you feel like there's too much lately of like unlimited, like uncontrolled, like beautiful image first kind of thinking and not enough like story first, gameplay first? Let's think out of the box within limitations and make the best of what we can do with whatever we have available, kind of um, like thinking. And do you think that's kind of part of the issue that we're facing today with like a lot of big games and big movies like flopping and not doing well? Do you think there's some sort of parallel, if you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, there I do see a parallel. The parallel I see between the flopping of games and films is kind of related to all the things you're talking about. I think we sort of saw a lot of the, VFX world leave California, a decade ago or more, because of cost. Um, and I just was just reading an article, or I saw an article the other day where it was, a lot of studios like left LA, they went to Georgia, and now they're leaving Georgia and going to the UK because they don't have to pay health insurance. I think, I think like one of the issues we see in the game dev world is well, I will say like we saw some wins last year, which was Marvel Rivals
mm,
and Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is coming out of Sweden, and Marvel Rivals is NetEase in China. Um, it would be very hard to make Helldivers 2 in California or Washington State, just because like Helldivers took 8 years to develop. And sometimes it takes that long to iterate and find a good thing. You know what I mean? Like that's totally reasonable in a lot of ways, right? From a creative endeavor standpoint. Not, I mean, us looking at this like as creatives, be like, hey, if I put a team of people together and they iterate for 8 years, I think they could probably find a good, fun game, right? That's a long time.
mm, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope, right? You'd hope, if you did the same thing in Washington or California, your budget would be, $500 million or $1 billion.
Yeah.
So I think that's the struggle, right? So it's this, what we see in games is I think we see, and maybe films, but I can speak more to games, is I think it's almost like uncertainty from like a high like leadership level, like the senior leadership, CEO level or whatever, right? Where it's like more creative vision holder level, um, where no one quite knows what they want to make, right? Like if someone has an idea for a game, they've got to really take a lot of risks to go make it. And so like you'll see games that just sort of churn sideways for years because there's all this uncertainty and blah blah blah. And before you know it, like they get canceled. Microsoft shuts them down or whatever. So yeah, I think if you have like strong creative leadership who has a vision and they know what to go after, they can get it done and they could probably do it cheap enough to succeed. It does happen. We do see it. It's just rare. Um, every other sort of like failure or whatever is like the result of spending too much time or not having enough time, because it's also like there's that old time quality money wheel, right? It's like you can do it fast and cheap, but you can't have all these things at once. You have to pick two. um so what we're seeing is like a lot of studios are just like going overseas, just kind of like, again, it's kind of similar to what we saw with the film thing. and it's not because there's not creative or talented people here or whatever. It's just because if you're gonna have to spend 8 years developing your game, then it's gonna be really hard to afford to do it in the United States. Um, or you know, NetEase making Marvel Rivals. It's like Rivals, regardless of what you think about it from a game standpoint, if you just look at it from like a spreadsheet standpoint, like their real only innovation there is that they were doing it cheap. So I think, yeah, for games to be successful in the US, it just needs to be, creative leadership, having a strong vision, sticking to it, and finding the fun and quick, and then putting it to market. So yeah, and I think like that's sort of been like the what we've been seeing going wrong. Um, to touch on like the stuff you were talking about around AI and stuff like that, I'm I've obviously like a lot of folks have been really concerned about AI. I sort of feel like I'm stressed about it, but I'm also not because it's really hard to make a game run at 60 frames or 120 frames. Frame interpolation is cool. Maybe NVIDIA can figure it out where it makes sense. Or maybe there can be some AI tool where it's like, if you're in New York and I'm in LA and we're playing Fortnite together, the AI can predict like where I'm going to shoot or where you're going to jump. You know what I mean? And then maybe that
Mm.
makes it like be like a compelling multiplayer experience. But it's just not there. And I don't know. I just like it's so hard, guys, to make, like if you ever mess around in Unreal, like it's hard to make a game run at 30 frames, 60 frames, 120 frames, with a whole bunch of players and all this stuff. It's like maybe they'll do it. I know there's really smart people or smart AI agents or whatever, but it's tough. I mean, I think the only way we would see it succeed in my mind is they go at it from another angle. And like we've seen like that Google project where you can like turn left or turn right and it just
Mm. Mm.
renders the left. Like maybe that's the approach where you don't try to make a conventional game in an editor like Unreal. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think that maybe AI will speed up things like, it could make it easier. And I think this is where like user generated content comes in. And that's why like I'm so interested in like Roblox and UEFN, Unreal Fortnite Editor, is I think if like the three of us had a cool idea for a game, it would be possible for us to go make it using AI tools, right? In the sense of like we can use AI to help us code verse in UEFN, or we can have AI help us code Lua in Roblox Studio. Um, in the past, you need all this engineering support, and I think and again, I'm going to kind of go on a bit of a rambling tangent here, but another tough thing in game development is getting the engineers. And this is sort of like this even touches on the overseas thing. So if you want to have, especially if you want to have your own engine, it's a whole other challenge. But even without your own engine, even if like just say you're using Unreal, you still need to have you're gonna probably have to change the engine. So you're gonna need some, core tech support, or even if you just need gameplay engineers, um, they're hard they're hard to get, right? Like because like if I need to get a gameplay engineer or a core tech engineer to help me make a game and I offer them X amount of money, they could just go across the street to Facebook or Microsoft or you know what I mean and just get double their salary. So that's another kind of tough component as far as like the game development world goes. And also like sort of like the complexity of like the global, marketplace. But yeah, that was a lot. The
No, but I
response.
think no, there's a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, yeah, on the one side we have stuff like Concord, right, which you would think that after 8 years and God knows how many hundred millions of dollars they would have figured it out, but I guess they didn't. And then on the other hand, you have
Well,
stuff like Clear Obscure, right? Sorry, yeah.
oh yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, that's the thing. It's like Concord from an art quality standpoint, like the art quality, like
Oh yeah,
like how it was achieved was good. But yeah,
yeah,
it's
of
like the
course.
all the underlay, it's all the other stuff. Yeah.
Hmm, definite. And Yeah, sorry, what was I going to say?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
But
interrupt you.
yeah,
Yeah,
these
my
days I
bad.
think you just said like, oh, like what's keeping somebody from going to Meta and earning probably double, triple, quadruple their salary, right? But I don't know, like these days I feel like there's enough people in the marketplace who are kind of tired of working for these companies and being laid off in 3 months and want to do like something cool again, right? So that's I think where stuff like Clear Obscure comes together, which I just recently watched like a long making of, which is just a lot of very dedicated people working together to make something great, right? And I hopefully think we'll see more of that, and I hope that these people will find a way to support themselves and their families doing this kind of stuff again, right? Because that's kind of a little bit what we lost, I think, in the last decades.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the tools and like it's been this idea of like the democratization of art or
Mm,
whatever. But I think it's terrible in a sense because it obviously like has made the market really tough for a lot of us.
mm,
But the glass half full look at that is, in the past, if I wanted to make a movie, I had to do it. I had to do what Ben is doing, right? I had to go make a graphic novel and then
mm,
shop it around and then try to, it's like it's a huge slog to just, and chances are it'll never happen. If you wanted to make a movie, it's so hard. But maybe like in the future, like that'll be easier, right? And I think in the sense that like there'll be like less barriers to entry because there'll be these access points for creatives to get their ideas through. Of course, there's a whole bunch of like ethical and other factors to that, which I'm not sort of like casually sidestepping, but I do think if the genie's out of the bottle, um, like there is a glass half full approach to that, which is that, well, we could just do it ourselves, right? And then what I mean by that is like, you know, this big studio should be more scared than we are, right? Like Microsoft should be more scared than I am because it's like, what's stopping me from just going and making the next Halo with like, 30 different AI tools? So in a lot of ways, like they're going to be like, it may be things that be really cool for them right now, but maybe not in 5 years, or vice
mm, good
versa,
point.
right? Like, some big film studio, um, films, they can offshore all this content right now and keep standing up all these like Netflix movies, but if they hit one stumble along the way in like generative AI video, then, well, guess who's going to know how to make that stuff? VFX guys, right? And they can fill in the gaps. So I don't know. I think there's hope, right? But like, or
Well,
it's not hopeless yet.
yeah, it's a good approach to, I think, see it in a different light, right, and see the positive side of it. Um, because yeah, there's a lot of despair and uncertainty and well, outright hatred and stuff like that. I think in the like at least amongst artist circles, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and writers and
Well, I
any
think.
creatives, I think. Yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's what's so. I mean, that's what's so kind of like almost. It's like morbidly funny. It's like we just saw that like ChatGPT 5, was basically more efficient and as a result less good than ChatGPT 4.
Hmm.
We know that like all these big tech companies are out. It's a power issue, right? Like they're running out of power. So everyone's going out and building their own nuclear power plants so that they can power their AI models. But it almost seems like it's losing momentum. And I think that's what I was thinking, like the dark, super funny side of this is like, what if after all of this, like all we lose is like, arts and creative writing, right? Like it could be, right? Like it
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me at this point because we're basically like hitting this like power issue threshold where if we can't get enough power to get to AGI, then we're just going to be stuck here where all the artists and screenwriters are out of work.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I have a
yeah.
question.
Go ahead.
When it comes to people who are studying environmental design or world building, and they want a job in this area, what would you have to say to those people?
Well, I think that it's just what we were just talking about, where it's like, in a way, it may there may now never been a better time, right? Like if you come out of college right now and you're like, I want to make a space opera, it's a lot easier to do it than it was when George Lucas tried, you know?
Sure, but as a designer, as an artist, like
Yeah.
they're not trying to make the next whatever, because all they want to do is, let's say, make art or do concept design for environments. I mean, where do
Yeah.
they, where what do they do?
Well,
Or
I
what's
think
your
that they,
advice to them?
well, I think it's, well, very similar almost to like, I mean, I would look at it like the way James Cameron did or like Neil Blomkamp, right? Where they're coming from art backgrounds. Like, Cameron was an illustrator, Blomkamp was a VFX guy. And, but ultimately, like if you're making a piece of, if all those like vision pieces we talked about earlier and those world building pieces, like I'm building that to sell a narrative or to sell a feeling or to, you know what I mean? To like build
Hmm.
this moment in a
Hmm.
game or a film. And I think like you can do that. And I almost don't think the medium is going to matter. But I do think what matters is, um, your point of view. And
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Like your creative voice. Because I think like that's the other thing, like in the world of AI slop, like having some voice is going to be more important than ever, because it's just like, okay, but you can spot it, right? Like we can go on social media or wherever, but go on Facebook, right? It's like it's all
Hmm.
this AI slop, and it's like it's so obvious, and it's all uninspired and derivative and blah blah blah. Just it's or microwave art, as I've heard it called, right? Um, so like microwave art could get you, could maybe be okay for most people's applications most of the time, but there's still going to be a need for like actual creative input, not just like 2D art, but even like creative writing, right? Like all these large language models, they're just regurgitating the same crap. The same with the GANs and all the image creators. It's just recycling all the stuff all the stolen stuff to make something that's like not new. So anything that's going to be like new and have a cool voice, like I just don't see it coming out of like, you know, an AI, right? Maybe to an extent, or maybe it's like a tool, but I still think you're going to have it. You need to have somebody who's championing that voice, like it's always been the case that ideas are a dime a dozen, you know? It's like you could have a million ideas, but it's like the Nike saying, just do it. Like if someone's not doing it, and it kind of gets back to like the concept artist on the team has to be the one that champions this idea and propagates it throughout the team and gets all the cats herded in one direction. Like even if AI is a tool being used, someone still has to be like, nope, it's this. Even if it's all AI images, someone has to be like, it's this AI image, right? You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but I don't think that that's going to be the case, right? I don't. I think that it's going to, even like if anyone out there is like using AI, and like maybe they generate 5 AM images themselves, and then they show them to you, they're going to be meaningless to you, right? Because like if someone shows me the AI images, I could care less. If I generate 5 AI images, like there's something I'm like, oh, I made that. That's interesting to me
Mm.
because it's like my prompt, right? But no one else is going to care. So I think it's a lot of ways it becomes like a sales job where then it's like, you know, you're gonna have, as an artist, you're gonna have to come up with what what your voice and what you want to express, and then regardless of the tools you use, but I don't think you're gonna be able to do it completely without artistic skill or taste or you know what I mean, like all those things. And then your job is going to be to champion it and like get people rallied around it and marching in one direction because you're still going to need a team, at least for a while, and especially in game development. Like I was saying, like I don't think, like it's hard to get a game to run right now. You know what I mean? So it's like it's going to be a bit, I think, until it's just all a push of a button.
And if it becomes push of a button, like why should anyone care about what you made, right? It
Yeah,
becomes like worthless, I think.
it does. It does. I mean, I could see a world where maybe it matters, like in the sense of like, oh, I want to see another season of Seinfeld. Okay, if I could push a button and see another season of
Oh my
Seinfeld,
God.
but do
Yeah.
you think it would be as good as like season 3? Probably not,
No, no,
But maybe
never.
that's okay. I don't know. But
But the
I
thing
think like
is,
from a game, yeah, from a
go
game
ahead.
dev standpoint, yeah, like I don't want to play. I don't want to play slot games. There's a whole bunch of slot games. They're
Yeah.
everywhere. And I don't want to spend my time doing that. Like you said, like I 0% care. I'm not going to invest my time. I I will invest my time and play a game. Like I'll play a Nintendo game. I'll play Breath of the Wild, sure.
Mm, mm.
But yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, same happening. Like, if you look on Amazon, like there's so many AI slop generated novels by authors who never allowed anybody to use their name or likeness or anything. And who buys that? Who reads that, right? It's kind of like the equivalent of like spam calls or spam emails that you just send them out in the wild and hope that some dumb people are gonna buy that. Sorry, not dumb people, but like people who are not aware that this is AI slop, right? Um, just to grift some money off them, right? That's kind of the equivalent. But yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. Like when you tell me like, oh, the push of a button, like you could like in the future generate like a new season of your favorite TV show, that actually has me scared. I don't know. I feel like the only reason why like something like Seinfeld or any other like good TV show, Breaking Bad, is so valuable is just because it just tells that one story, or it's kind of why was Star Wars so good before? Because we didn't know what the Kessel Run was like. We didn't know
Yeah.
about all this extended stuff, and I feel like it just drags it down. It drags the original down. The only thing that came out, if you talk about Star Wars, that actually made the original better is Andor. But everything else is kind of like I don't need to know all this. And but yeah, I guess humans on the one side have this like urge to like yeah, but I want more, I want more, I want more. But it's I don't know. In that case, for me, like more is not better, right? But yeah, you never know, right? People will do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think I want to consume I don't want to just like mindlessly consume content. So yeah, I want to watch good shows, see good movies, like they're thought provoking and same with viewing good art, right? And so yeah, I think I could imagine a scenario where there's like some consumer set that is interested in that, but it doesn't seem interesting to me right now. And I'm also skeptical it'll get there. You know what I mean? Like kind of getting back to like unless there's some turning point on like energy production or something, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden these models become way smarter, but it seems like they're sort of like hitting a wall, you know?
Hmm. Sorry, Emmanuel, I think we interrupted you before. Was there something you wanted to add?
No, no. I mean, my main thing is just, like what, if I'm a student coming out, what the hell am I gonna
Yeah.
do? And I think just feeling for them, and there is
Hmm.
definitely advice that I think can be given, which was just given, because ultimately taste and fundamentals, they all come into play no matter, what
But
avenue
so,
you.
you think, I
Yeah.
mean, now more than ever, you would have to, you should lean into like your own like preferences, lean into the weird, lean into the unexpected, and figure out your voice like quicker rather than like
Yeah.
take your time, right? I think that's a good recommendation to make.
I think it's just like figuring out what it is. Like if you're young, like figuring out what it is that yeah, like gets you excited. And then curating that. Like you might curate a Pinterest board or a Tumblr feed, right? And like just honing in on that. And I think that's what it means, or what I mean when I say like find your voice and like or like almost like your purpose as an artist. And it could be anything. And I think just letting that sort of like so that you're intrinsically motivated to go out and chase that work. And I think the rest will follow. To quote the deep philosophical work of Cars, you got to turn right to go left. Like
Perfect. That's only what that's a great quote. Um, anyway, so to kind of round out the interview, I think one thing you always ask is like, do you have any favorite bit of world building, whether it's like a film, a book, a game, animation, anything, right? Is there anything that you always go back to and you're going like, wow, that's just like that's amazing. That's the best like the best piece of world building you've ever seen, kind of thing.
Um, that's a tough one. I mean, I sort of like my mind, like I think this kind of touches on too, like what we're just talking about um content people are interested in. But like for me, um, I think like stuff that I saw in like kind of formative years was really powerful, right? So like Ghost in the Shell was a big deal, Star Wars. Um, and I think like as far as like world building point of view, I just remember viewing stuff and just being like so blown away by, almost like the creativity or things I had never thought of, and I just like, and just kind of like getting that, that those feelings of just like, awe and just like, yeah. And I think so. I think like for me, like a lot of the stuff I saw kind of like when I was young, and that's sort of like what inspires me and what I think is like super cool. Yeah, like even like we touch on like the James Cameron stuff and Alien and Aliens and um, yeah, I don't know. I don't have any. Sorry, I don't have any definitive piece.
Oh, that's okay.
But yeah,
Do you
yeah,
feel like it's harder these days for yourself to get like excited and be awed and by something?
yeah. I think nowadays I sort of like especially from a game standpoint, like I'm almost looking at things um from a game design standpoint more than art a lot of times, or like a total package, like
Mm,
kind of what we talked about, like when the art serves the design serves the art, and it all runs seamlessly on the hardware. I think that's really, impressive, seeing that done. I'm like kind of blanking on some good examples, but I know there's been some good ones recently where like, um, yeah, it's just like I always like, I'll tell you, like I really like Fortnite was a semi-recent one, that one came out in like 2017-ish. Um, and like I think that one's so because I think this is a good example of what I'm talking about, because like when Fortnite came out, I didn't like the art style. Like it's cartoony. It wasn't really my thing. But the gameplay was so cool. It's a battle royale, and then also have building built into it. And building is like this, camping is like a mechanic of a battle royale. You're going to camp in a bush, and they built it into like the core loop of the gameplay. It could you could build your own camping, spot essentially. So I thought that was like really fresh and innovative. We don't see a lot of stuff that fresh and innovative and very long, and I think that's why Fortnite's had such great longevity. And maybe not because it's free to play or the battle pass and all that. I think that's a part of it, but it's just like finding these like compelling twists that make games interesting. Um, so yeah, and I think that's again kind of getting back to like, not having a ton of innovation in games can be part of the reason why we've seen a trouble in the game industry as well. Probably in movies too, right? Because we've seen this in movies where a lot of the movies is just like the same. It's just another Marvel movie, likewise, we're just seeing another Call of Duty or whatever. When Minecraft came out, that was huge, a huge deal, right? Like this very
mm.
innovative game, and to this day, it's still fun. If I got trapped in a desert island, I'd want a Minecraft with me, Um, so, and I think it's just like it's rare that we see games come along that have that like special, sauce
Mm.
of where it all clicks, the art clicks, the design clicks, and it runs smooth. So yeah, I think that's what I'm always looking for is like, what is sort of like what's most inspired to me is like when I see games like that where I'm like, oh man, this one's doing it all,
Mm,
and
mm, mm.
it's like a masterpiece.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine. Just one quick question out of curiosity from parent to parent. What are your kids really into these days? I think your kids are a lot closer to the target audience for a lot of the products we work on than we are,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. Well, there, yeah. So like that was kind of what got me interested in Roblox to begin
Okay,
with.
right.
Was that they were all on a Roblox, but I would get really frustrated with them because they'd be playing all these slot games, and I'd be like, why don't you play?
Oh.
I like you have a Switch, like go play a Nintendo game. Like they're so much better. I got kind of pulled into that world, and there's some good stuff in there, but it's mostly very grindy. They were really into Valorant for a bit. All of them got really into Valorant. Right now,
Mm.
they're on an Apex kick because I don't know
Mhm.
why. Some streamers started playing Apex, I'm sure.
Ah, right.
Uh, but yeah, they sort of go in a loop. It
Ah,
feels
okay.
like I don't know
Got it.
if you experienced that with your kids, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, mine kind of go in a loop and they work in a pack, and one gets one game, and then the other one downloads it, and then the other one.
Nice, nice, nice. My son is still really into Minecraft, and then it's becoming a little bit Pokemon again, and then Minecraft again. So yeah, it's interesting. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. They go
Emmanuel, do
back
you
and
have
forth.
any last question?
No, I mean, that was my main question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, I asked enough at the beginning. I was like, I think there's definitely a lot to chew on for the
Yeah, there was a lot
audience.
in
I
there,
think
a lot
there's
of
a
good
lot.
stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I think then the only thing left to say is thank you for Darren for coming on and sharing all this great information with us. We'll share his links and everything, his TikTok on the description below, so please
Oh
check
yeah,
that out.
great.
And thank you so much, Darren, for joining us, and
Yeah,
thank
thank
you to
you.
the audience, yeah, for listening again and watching. And see you guys in the next episode.